The Iterator Pattern by Avery Webb, Kessler Cade, and Sam Sifon. The iterator pattern is defined as a way to access the elements of an aggregate object sequentially without exposing its underlying representation. So what does this mean? It means that we can access each element in our object one by one without having to go through the details of the structure of the element. The iterator pattern allows for a uniform way to step through each element in sequence. There are times when we don't really need to know how something is being done. We just need to access that element and get something done. The iterator pattern allows us to do just that. It allows us to step through each element in a container or object and find out what each element is. You might be wondering at this point if there's a specific order that each element is presented in. The answer is no. Iterators imply no ordering, which essentially means that the iterator pattern doesn't implement or require any specific order of the elements that it's going through.
The diagram here shows an example of the iterator pattern in the form of a UML diagram. In this example, we can see that both the aggregate and concrete aggregate objects have an iterator whose purpose is to keep track of each item in a series. These iterators keep track of the next item using a function titled next, and determines whether there is a next item to iterate to by using a function titled hasNext. This allows each object to iterate forward to the next item when you are done with the current object.
The iterator pattern is very useful in many circumstances. The iterator pattern was created so that we can have the ability to access elements without having to know how the elements are stored or caring, frankly, how they are stored. This is very helpful because it makes it much easier to reuse code efficiently. If we can access the elements in an object in the same way, no matter how the data is stored, then we can store data in the most efficient way for the data without having to worry about how to access it. So if we need one to be an array list and the other to be just a simple list and other things like that, we can use whatever data type we want so that we can make the program the most efficient and the best it can be. This means that even if they're stored differently, we can still grab the elements and manipulate them with the same code, which makes it easier for us to just reuse code. And that's really powerful for us. Because the iterator problem solves a problem faced by so many, another benefit of using the iterator pattern is that it is very common and widely used. Because of this, it is easy to find information on how to implement the iterator pattern in almost any programming language. It's always a Google away. Some languages also have iterators that we can use so we don't have to recreate the wheel. For example, the C++ standard template library has many iterators that we can utilize for containers, including arrays, decks, vectors, and lists. These iterators provide us with functions we need to fully utilize the iterator in our program. The standard template library has quote-unquote normal iterators, as well as iterators that provide us with extra functionality, such as direct access and bidirectional iterated power. These make the iterators even more powerful to us because they counteract some of the disadvantages of using iterators, which we will talk about next. Now that we've talked about some reasons why we should use the iterator pattern, let's talk about some drawbacks and some reasons why sometimes it's not the best. The first reason being the iterator pattern does not provide direct access to its elements, which means that let's say we need to access the 100th location in an object. You will need to iterate through 99 elements in front of it before you can access the 100th element, which means that there's a lot of extra work to do what would be a simple operation. For instance, if you just were accessing directly from the array, if you knew the array index, you could just pull that one index. But because we're using an iterator, we'd have to iterate through it, which causes some extra work. Also, you would need to add sorting capability if you want that ability, because the iterator doesn't inherently sort it, so you can't always get them sorted right, so we need to add some more sorting capability if we wanted to sort it.
The iterator pattern separates the user from the internal structure of the container. This allows the container to keep elements in more complex forms, while allowing the user to access these elements in the form of a sequence or list. The iterator pattern is a good uniform way to access these elements. For those reasons, we recommend using the iterator pattern when you don't need to know the structure of the elements, but you do need to have access to each element in the object or container. The iterator pattern will allow you to iterate through elements as if they were a list, and it also allows you to view the whole picture, but not the details. So, to review, we gave you the definition of the iterator pattern, which was that it provides a way to access the elements of an aggregate object sequentially, without exposing the underlying representation. And we've also discussed how the iterator pattern does not imply ordering. We also showed you how the iterator pattern works through the demonstration. We've discussed the upsides for using the iterator pattern, one of which was that you don't have to worry about how the elements are stored. We also talked about the downsides of the iterator pattern and how you do not have access directly to the elements. Finally, we recommended that you use the iterator pattern when you don't need to know the structure of the elements, but you need to access each element in the container sequentially.
Thank you for viewing this presentation. We hope that we have educated you a little bit about the iterator pattern. And if you do happen to have any questions about the iterator pattern or how it works, we ask that you contact us and we will try to figure it out for you. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful evening.